Hey everybody, this is John Ellis with Uphill Media, and I just ended the Awake show, and you guys were kind enough to everybody in the audience to let me know that Bernie Sanders was going to be talking here in Utah, Salt Lake City, Utah. Tom Perez is up right now. I'm going to cut to it, let him go. He's going to introduce Bernie soon, and welcome to your daily, Bern. Going to try to do this as often as we can as Bernie goes on tour and continues to rally, because I think it's important to spread this message. So thank you for being here. Please share the link and engage in the chat.
For this skinny budget, but a relative of mine, when she heard what I said somewhere else, said, "Tom, that's potty mouth." And I used a word that began with SH, and I'm going to use it again. It's a shoddy budget. It is a budget that's morally bankrupt, my friends. It is a budget. Budgets are moral documents. They reflect the values of a community. You eliminate funding for Meals on Wheels, and that is unconscionable. I have spent much of my life working with people with disabilities, working with senior citizens, trying to make sure they can live with dignity. And you know what happens when you lose your Meals on Wheels? You either starve to death or you're forced into an institution. You know who pays for that institution? The taxpayers. So it is stupid public policy, and it is inhumane public policy to zero out Meals on Wheels. You know, and there's another program that is very specific to Salt Lake City. I had the privilege.
I want to say a big thank you to Channel 2 CBS KUTV in Salt Lake City, Utah, for providing this stream for us.
Are there any veterans in the audience? Thank you for your service, sir. Thank you very much for your service. You know what? One of the main challenges that we addressed on that council, and my wife has spent her entire career working with underserved communities. She works at a place called the Washington Legal Clinic for the Homeless. Many of her clients are homeless veterans. Homelessness should never be a part of anyone's life. And we worked very hard on every issue. And there were 3 or 4 cities that worked particularly hard to eliminate homelessness generally and veterans homelessness in particular. And you know who one of the first 2 cities was to functionally eliminate veterans homelessness? It was Salt Lake City, my friends. Salt Lake City. And you know what this president wants to do? This president wants to zero out funding for the Interagency Council on Homelessness. That is unconscionable, my friends. That is absolutely unconscionable. And that is why, my friends, we need to keep fighting back. Because when we fight back, we win. I will tell you, the chaos and carnage aside, I think the most remarkable aspect of this first 100 days has been the tremendous power of the resistance in this room and across the country. We know January 20th was undeniably important, but January 21st was far more important. Thank you to the women in this room for leading marches across America. Thank you for standing up for your values. And you know what, folks? We have sustained it together, because when we put our energy and our values together, we make progress. I was in Georgia yesterday with a guy named John Ossoff. You know what, folks? He is going to be the next congressman from District 6 in Georgia. Flip the 6. That's our motto. You know what? And the thing about it is, there is absolutely 5 months ago, Price won with 24% margin. This is Newt Gingrich's old seat. Republicans have had it for 37 years. You know in this state a little bit about partisan gerrymandering. This seat is heavily gerrymandered, and yet he won over 48% of the vote. And when you count the other Democrats in the race, it's almost 49% of the vote. And you know what, folks? We're going to get over 50% on June the 20th. That's what we're going to do. And we invested in that case. We're investing in Montana, in South Carolina, in state races in Georgia, in Delaware, and elsewhere. Because you know what? We are the party whose mission is to help elect Democrats from the school board to the Senate. And we're going to flip Democratic House seats right here in Utah. I mean, my first indicator, my friends, as I was watching the energy unfold after January the 21st, one of the first indicators was that town hall meeting right here in Utah. Thank you for fighting back. Thank you for putting your values into action. Because, you know what? They were writing the obituary for the Affordable Care Act. And now they're writing the obituary for Jason Chavis. That's what we're doing. And we'll continue doing that. And we continue to see that action. And you know what, folks? We're going to continue to do this every single day, doing what John Lewis calls causing good trouble. That's what we do around here. And you know, we still have a lot of work to do. And I am acutely aware. I told you why I came here today. Because I understand that many people have questions and concerns about who we are as a Democratic Party. I was with steelworkers last week in Las Vegas because I'm making house calls everywhere. I want to listen to folks everywhere. I want to learn from folks everywhere. And I had someone who asked me the following question. They said, Tom, we don't know anymore what the Democratic Party stands for. And my response is, that's a fair question. And that's why I'm here to tell you what the Democratic Party stands for, because we have to earn your trust. And you know what, folks? We have to recognize that our futures are inextricably intertwined. The progressive movement, the Democratic Party, working people, the fate of our nation. And so I want to tell you clearly what the Democratic Party is about and what the Democratic National Committee will be fighting for. We believe in a government and an economy that works for everybody, not just a few at the top. The biggest difference between Republicans and Democrats is pronouns. We are always the party of we. They are the party of them, themselves, and I. We're not me, we are we. We all succeed only when we all succeed. We believe that America works best when it works for everyone. We believe that nobody who works a full-time job in this country should have to live in poverty. If you work a full-time job, you should earn a middle-class wage. We believe that zip code should never determine destiny in this nation. We believe that health care for all is a right, not a privilege. We believe that education is the great equalizer. We believe that we need an education secretary who actually supports public education. We need an EPA administrator who wants to protect the environment and will protect the Bears Ears National Monument. We believe that when women succeed, America succeeds. We believe that college should be affordable for everybody, not just a few at the top. We will eliminate the term educational mortgage from the American lexicon as Democrats. We will make sure that health care and child care are affordable, because your child care bill should not exceed your mortgage. We believe that when unions succeed, the middle class succeeds. We believe that everybody in the workplace should have a voice in that workplace. Because what I've learned, my friends, is that, and I've learned this all too hard, if you don't have a seat at the table, then you're on the menu. And we cannot allow workers to be on the menu. We believe, my friends, as Democrats, that the right to vote is our most sacred right, and we must protect that right. We must fight partisan gerrymandering. We must fight racial gerrymandering. We must not allow Republicans to engage in voter suppression. I've spent a good part of my life fighting for voting rights. John Lewis, so many others made such sacrifice, and we should be playing offense. And that's what we're going to do, fighting partisan gerrymandering. Make sure when you turn 18, you should be automatically registered to vote. We should allow for the national popular vote. We should allow to make sure that people can vote by mail. When you're eligible to vote, we should make it easier, not harder to vote. We believe as Democrats that our diversity is our greatest strength. It is something to celebrate. It is what makes America great and what has always made America great. We believe that we should be building more schools, not prisons, around this country. We believe that our LGBT brothers and sisters should be treated with dignity everywhere. We believe that our nation can and must be strong and compassionate. There is room for both. There is not only room for both, there is necessity for both. We believe that we must continue to build an America in which we build bridges of opportunities rather than walls of distrust. That's how we build the best America. We believe in an America in which hope trumps fear, in which hope can never be false hope. Donald Trump gives a lot of false hope to people, and that is a cruel hoax, my friends. We will compete in every single state. We will go around this country telling people that climate change is real, that we must protect our environment, that we must grow the energy economy, the alternative energy economy. We can grow jobs. We can have a clean environment, and we can create jobs. We can do both, my friends, if we put our mind to it. And we will compete in every single state, my friends, to put these values in action. We will work with everyone in the pursuit of an America that works for everyone. And as we move forward, we really do, I think, have a tremendous opportunity. And I had an opportunity back in the 90s to work for a guy named Ted Kennedy, who was my mentor. And Senator Kennedy's brother, Bobby, in the 1960s said something that I think informs the work ahead. He was organizing farm workers with a leader named Cesar Chavez. And remember, si se puede, vamos a ganar. Si se puede, si se puede, si se puede, si se puede, si se puede. Porque somos los Estados Unidos, no somos los Estados divididos. And here is what Bobby Kennedy said. He said, again, in the middle of the 1960s, tumultuous times for our nation, we stand at a defining moment in history, a point of difficulty and danger that would determine our nation's future. And he went on to say that when your children and grandchildren take the place in America, taking good jobs at good pay, when you look at them, you will tell them, I was there. I stood up. I marched. I did this. You are marching, my friends. You are standing, my friends. You are fighting back, my friends. You're doing what John Lewis called good trouble. And that's what we need to do. But we need to not only oppose Donald Trump and everything he's trying to do to divide America, we need to lead with our values. I articulate our values in America that works for everyone. I firmly believe that Dr. King was correct when he said that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it indeed bends toward justice. But my friends, remember this. It never bends on its own. Let's bend it together, and let's bend it with my good friend, Senator Bernie Sanders.
Thank you. Thank you all. You know, I was told that Utah was a conservative state. Doesn't look like that tonight. Let me thank Peter Caroon and Sarah Combs and Asma Ali Dahir and Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, who is going to be one of the leaders in the United States Congress. Let me thank Maria Elena Durazo and my good friend Tom Perez for all of their excellent work. I don't have to tell anybody here this afternoon, and by the way, this is an extraordinary turnout. I don't have to tell you that we live in very difficult times. This country faces major economic problems. We face political, social, racial, environmental problems. And we can respond to those crises, it seems to me, in one of two ways. We can look around us and watch CNN and say, oh my God, I can't deal with this anymore. This is too crazy for me. And we can kind of throw our hands up in the air and say, I'm out of this, man. I don't need this stuff. That's one way, and it's not a crazy way. And there are a lot of people in this country who are responding to that. Problems are insolvable. I can't get involved. I got other things to do with my life. I understand that. But there is another response. And that response says that in the greatest nation in the history of the world, we have been through struggles before, and today, amidst all of these problems, we are not going to desert our kids and our grandchildren and this planet. We are going to stand up and we are going to fight back. And that's what this is about. Now, I so much appreciate the personal support that many of you have given to me, and thank you for all those who helped out in the presidential primary. But I want to make it as clear as I can. This is not about Bernie Sanders. This is not about Tom Perez. This is not about anybody else. You know who this whole thing is about? It's about you. And it's about your children, and it's about your parents, and it's about the environment. Now, there are some folks who look at the political world and they say, okay, there are blue states over there and there are red states over there, and I come from Vermont and that's a blue state, and you're here in Utah and that is a red state. I don't really believe that stuff. I really don't. I understand that there are differences between Vermont and Utah. Our maple syrup is much better than yours. Although your mountains are a bit higher than ours, I can see that. But at the end of the day, we're all human beings and we all have the same needs. And we have the same vision. And we want the same lives for our kids and for our parents. Now, one of the things that has happened over the last many years is the Democratic Party has kind of turned its back on a lot of states in this country. And I think that was a mistake. I think that was a mistake. And I think Tom Perez being here today tells you that those days are over. That from now on in, the Democratic Party will be a party of 50 states. And that most certainly includes the beautiful state of Utah. And what the Democratic Party has also got to become is a grassroots party, a party where decisions are made from the bottom on up. A party which opens its doors and says to working people and says to young people, come on in, we want your energy, we want your idealism, we want your ideas. Now, I am more than aware that here in Utah, you have 4 members of the U.S. Congress who are Republican. I am more than aware that you have 2 United States senators who are Republican. I am more than aware you got a governor that's Republican. And I'm more than aware that you have a legislature which is overwhelmingly Republican. Which puts you in a great position. You have no place to go but up. And the truth of the matter is that if we can bring our brothers and sisters into a grassroots political movement, in my view, I do believe we can win here in Utah. And I think I'll tell you why I believe that we can win in Utah. We just came from Nebraska, same story yesterday. And we're going to Arizona, and we're going, all over this country. Went to Kansas. I think that we can win because when we explain that today's Republican Party has moved to be a right-wing extremist party, beholden to the Koch brothers and the billionaire class, to the degree we get that information out, a lot of folks who voted for Donald Trump are going to have some second thoughts. Let me give you one example. All of you know what the Trump-Ryan health care proposal that we, thank God, defeated was all about. And I speak today not just to you, but to the folks here in Utah who voted for Donald Trump. And I want you to think about it hard. This was, first of all, when Donald Trump ran for president, he said that he was going to provide health care for everybody. Well, Donald Trump did not tell the truth. He did not tell the truth with regard to health care, and by the way, he did not tell the truth with regard to many other issues. All right, on health care, I speak now to folks who voted for Trump. Do you think that a quote-unquote health care proposal makes sense? And by the way, your United States senators voted it. No, they didn't vote for it. It didn't come. Your people in the House voted for it, or at least dealt with it. This was the proposal. It threw 24 million people off of health insurance. It would have raised premiums for older workers very, very significantly. It would have cut Medicaid by over $800 billion. Do you know, people think, well, Medicaid is just a program for poor people. It also, 2/3 of Medicaid funding goes to nursing homes. So when people's moms and dad end up in nursing homes, guess who pays the bill? Most of the time it is Medicaid. And it would have cut Planned Parenthood, defunded Planned Parenthood completely. And in that regard, I hear Republicans, they talk a whole lot about choice. 2.5 million women in this country choose Planned Parenthood. They were going to take away that right. And by the way, what this legislation also did, and what it was really mostly about, was providing $300 billion in tax breaks for the top 2% and more tax breaks for the insurance companies and the drug companies. Does anybody in Utah think that that plan makes sense? That's damn right. So I say to the folks in Utah, yeah, we're going to disagree on this issue. We'll disagree on that issue. I do understand that. But very few people in the United States think that throwing 24 million people off of health insurance and raising premiums makes any sense at all. And the way we defeated that proposal is that here in Utah and all over this country, people came out to rallies, they came out to town meetings, and they said to the Republican members of Congress, sorry, you're not going to throw my wife or my husband or my kids off of health insurance. But it is not just that one particular plan. And again, I speak to the people in Utah who voted for Trump. Did you really vote for a president who appoints at the highest level people who have worked their entire political lives to cut Social Security, to cut Medicare, and to cut Medicaid? Did you vote for a budget introduced by Trump which would expand military spending by $80 billion over the next 2 years while it cuts back on the Meals on Wheels program? In my state and in your state, Meals on Wheels is the program that brings one hot, nutritious meal a day to senior citizens, people who desperately need it, low-income seniors. You don't expand military spending by $80 billion and then cut back on Meals on Wheels. You don't cut back on the Pell program, making it easier for kids to get to college. The WIC program provides nutrition for pregnant women and little babies. You don't give tax breaks to billionaires and cut back on nutrition programs for pregnant women. At a time when we're so worried about the drug epidemic all over this country, we want our kids to be in safe, nurturing places after school. You don't cut back on after-school programs. So I ask my friends here in Utah, many of whom voted for Donald Trump, think hard. Do you really believe that at this moment of massive income and wealth inequality, we need hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks for the wealthiest people in this country, and then cutbacks in Medicare, Medicaid, education, environmental protection. Our job is to start reaching out, to start talking to folks who have views different than us on this or that issue. But I believe that the vast majority of the people in Utah, Vermont, and in every other state in this country do not believe in priorities which are designed to help the very rich at the expense of everybody else. Now, when we rethink the Democratic Party, when we make it into a grassroots party, it's not good enough just to open the doors. That's what you got to do. But you also got to provide an agenda, a progressive agenda around people, which people will come into. The truth of the matter is, this is no secret. Millions of people in this country are giving up on the political process entirely. And I can, believe me, as a member of the Senate, fully understand that. All right? They're giving up because they are hurting. They are in pain, and they don't hear too many people acknowledging their pain or fighting to address their issues. You can turn on the TV today, and you're not going to hear many people saying that there is something wrong when in Vermont or in Utah, a mom is making $30,000, $40,000 a year, but she's forced to pay $10,000 or $15,000 a year for child care for her 2-year-old. You're not hearing too many people saying, maybe there is something wrong when over the last 40 years on the Democratic and Republican administrations, we've had an economy in which the middle class has shrunk. 43 million people today live in poverty, and almost all new income and wealth are going to the top 1%. In this country right now, we have not just an economic crisis, we have a moral crisis. And here is the moral crisis. The moral crisis is, can we sustain our great nation when so few have so much and so many have so little? And I want to again speak not just to the people in this room, but to people all over the great state of Utah. Tell me whether you think it is morally acceptable that the top 0.1% now owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. Do you think it is morally acceptable that the 20 wealthiest people now own more wealth than the bottom half of the American people? Is it morally acceptable? We're talking not about some third world country. We're talking about the United States of America. Is it morally acceptable that one family, the Walton family who owns Walmart, one family owns more wealth than the bottom 42% of the American people? Now, I know that many of my Republican colleagues find it politically expedient to be beating up on poor people. And they're going after anybody who is on welfare. Do you know what family is the major welfare recipient in the United States of America? It's the Walmart. It's Walmart and the Walton family. Why is that? Because Walmart pays wages that are so low that many of their employees are forced to go on food stamps, Medicaid, and subsidized housing. So I say to my Republican colleagues, if you want to go after welfare cheats, why don't you start with the Walton family? But there's one problem there. One problem. The Walton family are rich and powerful. And poor people have no power. And it's always easier to go after poor people than after the people who have the money and the power. When we talk about the economy today in my state and in your state, we have people who are not working one job, they're working two jobs, they're working three jobs to cobble together the income and the health care that they need. This is the wealthiest country in the history of the world. People should not be forced to work 50, 60, 70 hours in order to bring home enough money to take care of their families. Today in Utah, today in Vermont, today all over this country, you got 50-year-old workers who have worked at a plant for their entire lives. And then one day they go into work and somebody says, well, I'm sorry, we're shutting down the plant and we're moving to a cheap labor place in China or in Mexico. We need trade policies which represent the needs of workers in America, not just CEOs. Today in America, because wages have not kept up with inflation, you have millions of people who are 55, 60, 65. They have worked their whole lives. And you know how much money they have in the bank as they wait for retirement? Zero. Half of the older workers in this country have almost nothing in the bank as they await retirement. This is, and I want to make this point over and over again, when you hear politicians on television saying we got to cut programs for the children, for the poor, for the elderly, for the sick, you remind them that this is the wealthiest country in the history of the world. And we do not need to see veterans sleeping out on the street who are homeless, kids who are hungry. What we do need, among other things, is to have billionaires like Donald Trump start paying his fair share of taxes. Our job is to come forward to speak to the people of Utah about a progressive agenda which works for working families. For a start, I want everybody in Utah to know it's not only imperative that we defend the Affordable Care Act. After we successfully do that, what we do next is join the rest of the industrialized world for a Medicare for all single-payer program. Now, I know that your leadership here, your political leadership in Utah, is not going to talk about it. But what we have got to talk about is ask a simple question. How can it be that Canada, and the Canadian border is 50 miles away from where I live, Canada, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, every major country on earth somehow manages to guarantee health care to all of their people? If they can do it, we can do it. The function of a healthcare system is to provide quality health care to all people in a cost-effective way. It is not to enable the insurance companies and the drug companies to make billions in profit every year. And while we're on the subject of health care, let me again speak to those people in Utah who voted for Trump. Right now in America, we pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. People in Vermont, people in Utah cannot afford the prescriptions their doctors prescribe Older people are dividing their pills up in half. 2 years ago, the 5 largest drug companies made $50 billion in profit. Trump, during the campaign, talked about the high cost of prescription drugs. We have introduced legislation that would substantially lower drug costs in America. Mr. Trump, keep your word. Stand with us. Lower the cost of prescription drugs. Now, here in Utah and nationally, we have a minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. Now, you don't have to be a PhD in economics. All you need is a calculator to figure out that people can't make it. Nobody can make it. You can't pay your rent, you can't pay your utility bills, you can't provide health care, you can't own a car, you can't do the basic necessities on $7.25, $8, $9 an hour. We need to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, $15 an hour. And we are going to introduce that legislation in the very near future. Tell your senators to come on board, $15 an hour. And when we talk about wages, this is the year 2017. We have got to end the disgrace of women making 79 cents on the dollar compared to men. And I know that every man in this room will stand with the women in the fight for equal pay. Brothers and sisters, we live in a highly competitive global economy. And that means that the new jobs that are coming in Utah and in Vermont often require a higher education. Technology is changing every day. The economy is changing. The global economy is changing. 50 years ago, it was good enough to have a high school degree. You can go out and get a job and make it into the middle class. That is not the case today. Today, if you're going to get the jobs of the future, you need higher education. And we must make certain that every person in Utah, Vermont, and America has the opportunity to get that education regardless of the income of his or her family. And that is why I have introduced legislation which will guarantee that public colleges and universities are tuition free. And think of what that means. It tells kids here in Salt Lake City or in Burlington, Vermont, that no matter what the income of your family is, if you study hard, if you do well in school, yes, you're going to be able to go to college. And that legislation also deals with another crisis that we got to put on the table, and that is that millions of people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s are struggling with outrageously high levels of student debt. How many people here are dealing with student debt? I rest my case. And yet many people here are paying interest rates of 6, 8, 10% when you go out and buy a new car for 2 or 3%. We are going to substantially lower interest rates on student debt. Now, some people say Well, Bernie, that's an expensive proposition. You want to make public colleges and universities tuition free. You want to lower student debt. Costs a lot of money. It does. About $70 billion a year. How are you going to pay for it? I will tell you exactly how we are going to pay for it. We're going to pay for it through a tax on Wall Street speculation. The truth of the matter is, and we got to put this on the table, that over the last 40 years, there has been a massive redistribution of wealth in this country. You all know that? Problem is, it's gone in the wrong direction. It's gone from the middle class to the top 1/10 of 1%. So today we say to Wall Street and the billionaire class, we bailed out Wall Street. It's time for you to help the working families of this country. And there's another issue I want to touch upon briefly, is that a lot of my conservative friends, they run for office and they say, get the government out of the lives of the people. Deregulates. Don't have the government telling you what you got to do. Well, if that's the case, then let's all support a woman's right to control her own body. And when we're on the subject of family values, there is one major country on earth that does not guarantee paid family and medical leave. That has got to change. 12 weeks paid family and medical leave. The bottom line of the economic issues that we face is that as the wealthiest nation on the history of the world, we can and we must create an economy that works for all people, not just the 1%. Furthermore, we have got to address a broken criminal justice system. There is no rational reason why we have more people in jail than any other country and are spending $80 billion a year to lock up fellow Americans. Brothers and sisters, instead of building more jails and pushing more incarceration, we need education and jobs for our young people. There are 11 million people in this country who are undocumented. And today, many of them are living in the shadows. They're living in fear, and they are getting exploited on the jobs because they have no legal rights. We will stand up to those who are scapegoating the undocumented. And we are going to fight for comprehensive immigration reform and a path toward citizenship. Now, I don't know what your leadership is telling you here, your political leaders here in Utah, about climate change. But let me tell you, as a member of the Senate Energy Committee and Environmental Committees, what the scientific community is telling us. And what the scientists are telling us is that climate change is real. It is caused by human activity. It is already causing major problems in our country and around the world. And what they are also telling us is if we do not get our act together and transform this planet, the seas are going to rise. We're going to have more floods, more droughts, more extreme weather disturbances. We're going to have more acidification of the ocean. We're going to have more global conflict as people fight over limited natural resources. My message to Donald Trump is listen to the scientists, not the fossil fuel industry. Now, let me say, especially here in Utah, where you are a very strong minority, I think all of you know that the history of this country has always been a history of struggle. And that means that nothing significant has ever been accomplished unless millions of people at the grassroots level stood up and fought back. That's the history of America. There was a time 100 years ago and longer, we had workers in this country working 60, 70 hours a week, working in incredibly dangerous jobs. We had children working in factories, losing their fingers, being around machinery they should not have been around. But working people all over this country stood up and helped develop the trade union movement to give workers protection on the job. That's how change occurs. 100 years ago, and the children don't know this, 100 years ago, women in America did not have the right to vote. They couldn't do the jobs they dreamed of doing. They couldn't get a higher education. But women and their male allies, by the millions, came together and said that in America, women will not be second-class citizens. I don't have to recount for you the tragic history of slavery in this country, of racism, of all kinds of discrimination. But from way back when, way before Martin Luther King Jr., African Americans and their allies, at tremendous risk, stood up and said, you know what? African Americans will have the right to vote in every state in this country. We're not going to have segregated schools. And people, as you all know, African Americans and their white allies, some of them went to jail, some were beaten, some were lynched for standing up for human dignity. But they struggled. And while racism remains a serious problem, there is no question we have come a long way. And then even more recently, just within the last 20 years, we have seen the fruits of the labor of the gay community, which struggled. These are folks, brothers and sisters, who struggled for decades for dignity, to be able to say that they want to be able to love anyone regardless of their gender. And the amount of pain and humiliation that they suffered as a result of that struggle was incredible. Yet they persisted. And several years ago, Supreme Court said, yes, gay marriage will be legal in every state in this country. Now, I give you that short lesson in American history, which all of you already know, for one reason. And that reason is that progress is not easy. It takes struggle. Frederick Douglass said, you all remember what he said? He said, you can't give me freedom. I've got to fight and struggle for freedom. Nobody gives you justice. You got to stand up and fight for justice. So here we are today in the year 2017, and there's a lot that we can be very proud of. We have come a long way over the last many decades in the fight against sexism. Still have a long way to go. We've made real progress. Fight against racism, fight against homophobia. We have made real progress. But there is one area where not only have we not made progress, but we are losing ground, and that is the economic struggle. And that means that in the richest country in the history of the world, we should not be living in a country today where almost all of the new income and wealth is going to the people on top. We should be living in a nation in which when people work, they earn decent wages, where women are getting 100 cents on the dollar compared to men, where workers can form trade unions. And when I look at this country, please don't tell me that if every other major country on earth can provide health care to all, don't tell me that the United States of America can't do the same. Don't tell me, please don't tell me, that the United States of America can't make sure that all of our kids, regardless of income, have the ability to go to college. Don't tell me that we cannot overturn Citizens United and create a nation of one person, one vote, not billionaires buying elections. Don't tell me we can't lead the world in combating climate change and transforming our energy system away from fossil fuel. Brothers and sisters, we are in the majority, not the minority. Very few Americans believe, not in Utah, not in Vermont, not any place, that the future of America is more tax breaks for billionaires and cuts to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and education. The truth is that most Americans, vast majority, want an economy that works for working families, not just billionaires. Which takes us to where we are today. There is an enormous responsibility on your shoulders. Because if we can develop a strong grassroots movement here in Utah, if we can reach out to our working class brothers and sisters who can't afford child care, who can't afford health care, who can't afford to send their kids to college, we have got to reach out with love and bring them in to our movement. They are not our enemies, they are our brothers and our sisters. And if the whole country looks at Utah, because if you can do it here, and I believe you can, there is no state in the country where we cannot do it. So I beg of you, not just for yourselves, but for your kids, your grandchildren, for the future of this planet, please be involved in every way you can. Please have the courage to take on powerful special interests. And when we do that, brothers and sisters, we are going to create the nation that you and I know that we can become. Thank you all very much.